Before we start, a little reminder to hit the subscribe button. Just 4% of my channel is subscribed. Now we start the story. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the peaceful murmur of 1,000 alien voices, each representing one of the various races that compose the United Galactic Federation. Towering insectoids, gelatinous entities in containment suits, reptile warlords, and numerous others crowded the enormous hall. And standing before them, on a raised platform at the very center, was Ambassador Jason Reed, the last human voice in the council. He stood tall, though anxiety lined his features. The weight of his species' fate pressed heavily upon him. Across from him, Grand Arbiter Zell Thorin, a being of the Zipper Dominion with an elongated cranium and dazzling emerald skin, lifted a clawed hand. Silence fell upon the chamber. Ambassador Reed's voice resonated, tinged with hatred. The Council has liberated the vote. It is unanimous. Humanity is hereby removed from the United Galactic Federation, effective immediately. A collective murmur raced through the chamber. Some animals indicated satisfaction, others kept a neutral position. Jason, however, remained unmoved. He had expected this. "This is a mistake," Jason remarked, his voice forceful but measured. "You fear us because we refuse to kneel. You label us irresponsible because we fight for our own interests. But tell me, which one of you has never placed their own kind first?" Zelthorn's nostrils flared. "Your type upsets the balance. Humans refuse to adhere to our accords, to our order. You lack the wisdom of older races and yet expect a seat at the table." Jason smirked. "Because we refuse to let stagnant, decaying civilizations dictate our future." He examined the room. "You preach peace, yet half the species here still wage conflicts in the dark. You say we're too young, yet we've done in 3 centuries what many of you haven't in millennia." A murmur of displeasure crept around the chamber. Some species nodded softly, but none dared speak in behalf of mankind. It was a lost cause. The choice had been made. Zell Thorn struck the podium with his staff. "Enough! You may depart with what little respect your people still possesses." Jason inhaled sharply and nodded. "Fine. You don't want us? You won't have us. But you will regret this." He turned, his boots resounding on the clean floor as he went. The people in attendance followed, silent but enraged. Outside the chamber, General Amanda Vasquez, outfitted in her Earth Defense Fleet uniform, was already waiting with a knowing look. "They actually did it," she mumbled. Jason sighed. "Yeah, they did." She crossed her arms. "So, what now?" Jason's smirk reappeared, but this time it conveyed something different. Resolve. "Now, we alter the rules. Humanity wasn't finished. Not by a long stretch. The minute mankind was ejected from the Galactic Council, the wheels of change began turning. Back on Earth, the announcement was welcomed with wrath. News broadcasts carried images of Jason Reed's final stand in the Council chamber, replaying his statements over and again. Protests erupted across human colonies, not against their leaders, but against the aliens who had set them aside. The people didn't perceive this as a loss. They regarded it as a declaration of war, one that had yet to be fought. At the Terran High Command on Luna, the most powerful leaders of humanity gathered. Generals, scientists, diplomats, and corporate executives crowded the battle room. A giant holographic projection in the center showed the galaxy globe, showing every known trade route, resource hub, and key site. Jason Reed stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, his expression set in stone. "They think they've won by kicking us out," he replied, voice calm but cutting. "But we are no longer bound by their regulations, their treaties, or their limits. They've basically given us the one thing we've always thrived on." Admiral Vasquez smirked. "Freedom." "Exactly." Jason pointed at the map. "For years, we've played by their laws, paid their taxes, traded under their tariffs, subjected to their ludicrous restrictions. But now we create our own terms." Dr. Elias Carter, director of the Terran Research Division, leaned forward. "Are you saying we should break their technology embargo?" Jason caught his gaze. "Not just break it, shatter it." There was a significant silence before Vasquez grinned. "I like where this is going." For generations, humanity had been artificially held back. The Council controlled what technology could be produced, what weapons could be built, what ships could be flown outside defined boundaries. It was a mechanism designed to keep them under control, to ensure no fledgling race could ascend too quickly. We don't have their Numbic, but now, with their deportation, the floodgates were opened. We don't have their numbers, Vasquez admitted, but we don't need them. We have versatility. We innovate quicker than any species in the known galaxy. Jason nodded. And we're about to prove it. Within weeks, Earth's shipyards swung into overdrive. The next generation warships, previously held back by bureaucratic red tape, were greenlit for mass construction. AI research, formerly carefully supervised by the Council, advanced at an exponential rate. Experimental weapons that had been put away due to ethical concerns were now being tested. Meanwhile, human firms recognized an opportunity of their own. With the Council's constraints gone, Terran enterprises moved aggressively into locations where alien businesses had once reigned. Human privateers, formerly described as simply traders, became something else entirely. Armed merchant vessels, secured trade routes, offering protection for a charge. It didn't take long for the rest of the cosmos to notice. The first genuine clash happened when the Zir Dominion sought to conquer a former Terran colony, believing mankind to be too weak to protect it. They were wrong. The new Terran fleet arrived in force, equipped with armaments the Dominion had never seen before. Their ships were quicker, their tactics unpredictable, their AI-driven targeting systems faultless. The battle lasted less than an hour. When the dust settled, the Dominion had lost an entire fleet. Humanity had lost a single ship. The message was clear. The Council had thrown mankind out. Now, humanity would teach them why it was their worst mistake. The defeat of the Zir Dominion fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in history, a younger species had not only defied an elder race, but thoroughly humiliated them in war. The Council sought to downplay the defeat, calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding, but behind closed doors, they were panicked. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was only getting begun. Jason Reed stood on the viewing deck of the Olympus shipyards, watching as the first of the new Dreadnought-class warships was constructed. The HSS Vengeance drifted in the void like a sleeping giant. Its sleek black hull bristling with weaponry the Council had long declared too dangerous for growing species. Admiral Vasquez joined him, a datapad in her hand. We've just finished retrofitting the first batch of ships. AI-assisted targeting, electromagnetic shielding, next-gen railguns. We're years ahead of what the Council allows their own fleets to use. Jason smirked. Good, because they're about to come knocking. The Council had underestimated mankind for too long. They had considered them as an upstart species, a small inconvenience to be removed. But now, they had no choice but to take Earth seriously. And exactly as Jason predicted, the Council's response came soon. A delegation arrived in Sol space, led by none other than Grand Arbiter Zurin himself. The huge Council flagship, Eminence, overshadowed the human escort ships as it took position in high orbit over Earth. Jason and Vasquez took a shuttle up to the Eminence, greeting the delegation in the Council's hallmark vast, luxurious rooms. Zelen stood at the head of the room, his emerald green eyes filled with barely hidden hatred. You have gone too far, Ambassador Reed. Jason chuckled, crossing his arms. You threw us out, Arbiter. Did you think we'd just roll over and die? The Zir commander snarled. You have violated interstellar law. You have developed weapons forbidden to lesser species. You have conducted unauthorized military actions against a member race of the Council. Vasquez stepped forward, her voice steely. We defended our people, something you failed to do when you let the Dominion attack us. The Council members grumbled among themselves, evidently unprepared for this level of disobedience. For generations, younger species have always deferred to the Council's rule. But humanity has evolved in conflict. They had lived through resilience. They didn't back down. Z Thorne's voice got harsher. You must cease your militarization immediately and submit to Council oversight or face consequences. Jason's smirk grew. Or what? The Arbiter's expression hardened. The Council will impose sanctions. We will cut your trade, isolate your species, and if necessary, we will enforce compliance. Vasquez scoffed. You're threatening us with war? No, Zelthorn answered coldly. I am offering you a chance to avoid one. Jason exhaled slowly. He peered around the room, catching the eyes of every alien present. They thought they still had power over humanity. They assumed their threats had weight. They were wrong. Jason made a step forward. "You don't get it, do you?" His voice was soft yet carried through the chamber. "We don't need your trade. We don't need your protection. And we sure as hell don't need your permission." Z. Thorne's jaw clenched. "You are making a mistake." Jason shook his head. "No, you made the mistake. You thought throwing us out would weaken us, that we would beg to be let back in, that we would fall in line like every species before us. But that's not how humanity works." He turned, starting towards the exit. Before departing, he glanced over his shoulder. "You wanted us out? Fine. But from now on, humanity answers to no one." With that, Jason and Vasquez left the council rooms, leaving behind a room filled with startled stillness. Back on Earth, the declaration was made official. Humanity was no longer a part of the United Galactic Federation. They were something new, independent, unconstrained, and for the first time in history, an outsider species would no longer accept galactic law. They would write it. The Council's delegates returned to their homeworlds with sad expressions, their threats having fallen on deaf ears. Humanity had made its stance clear. They would not be governed, they would not be restricted, and they would surely not kneel. The response from the galactic community was rapid and split. Some elder species, like the Gir Dominion, clamored for war, demanding rapid and severe reprisal to right humanity's intransigence. Others, however, saw something different: opportunity. Within weeks of the Council's unsuccessful ultimatum, additional transmissions filtered into Terran High Command. Species that had long languished under the bureaucratic tyranny of the United Galactic Federation sought out, seeking to forge trade and military alliances with humans. They had seen Earth's quick technological developments, their unpredictable and lethal military plans, and, more crucially, their resistance to be governed. To these creatures, humanity was no longer merely a rebellious upstart. They were an inspiration. Jason Reed stood in the command center of the newly constructed Terran Sovereignty headquarters, looking over the incoming transmissions. Vasquez was alongside him, poring over a report on recent fleet maneuvers. "You're not going to believe this," she whispered, giving him a datapad. Jason scanned through the file, his brows lifting slightly. The Zorth clans, a nomadic warrior species that had opposed the Council for generations, had just proclaimed their formal support for humans. They weren't alone. Over a dozen lesser species, from independent commercial guilds to disaffected border worlds, had begun associating themselves with Earth. Jason smirked. Well, well, looks like we're not the only ones tired of the Council's crap," Vasquez chuckled. "And the best part? The Council can't do a damn thing about it." Without the legal restraints of the Federation, humanity had become something dangerous, an unregulated, fast-moving force that no longer played by the rules. Meanwhile, deep in the Zephyr Dominion, Grand Arbiter Zell Thorin stood before a meeting of warlords, his wrath bubbling over. "Humanity has gone too far," he yelled, smashing his clawed fist against the table. "They have corrupted lesser species, expanded beyond their means, and now openly challenge our authority." One of the Dominion's admirals, a scarred reptilian brute, roared in answer. "Then we do what should have been done long ago. We crush them." Z. Thorin sighed, composing himself. "Yes, but not yet." His emerald eyes sparkled with calculation. "Humanity fights like a cornered beast. We have seen what happens when they are underestimated." The warlords nodded grimly. The devastating loss of an entire Dominion fleet had been a terrible lesson. "We will not make the same mistake." Zelthorn's voice sounded chilly. "We will strike, not with brute force, but with precision. We will divide them, break their alliances, bleed them slowly. And when the time is right," his lips twisted into something that may have been a smile, "we will erase them from history." Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for the inevitable. War was coming, and this time they would not be caught unprepared. Jason stood in the battle room, peering at the galactic map. His people had accomplished in months what others had failed to do in ages. They had disturbed the balance of power, challenged the old empires, and broken the idea of council supremacy. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: the galaxy wasn't ready for what was coming next. Because now, humanity wasn't simply battling to survive, they were trying to win. The conflict didn't begin with a spectacular invasion. There was no declaration, no formal combat lines drawn. Instead, it started in the shadows. First, human commerce convoys began missing without a trace. Merchant ships, previously guarded by lightly armed patrol craft, were ambushed in outer space. Sensor records showed nothing. Just ships disappearing mid-transit. Then came the sabotage. Supply stores on distant colonies burst in flames. Data networks crashed. Infrastructure failed. Entire communication grids went dark. Someone was trying them, exploring their weaknesses. Jason Reed watched the reports build up on his terminal. They're trying to bleed us dry before the real war even starts. Admiral Vasquez nodded grimly. Zell Thorin isn't an idiot. He knows that if we fight head-on, we'll punch above our weight. So, he's playing dirty. Jason exhaled, rubbing his temples. Good. Vasquez frowned. Good? Jason caught her eyes, a cold sneer flashing on his lips. It means they're scared. Across the cosmos, humanity's foes waited in the darkness, thinking they were clever. What they didn't comprehend was that people flourished in the darkness. They have established entire industries around cyber warfare, black ops, and unorthodox methods. If the Dominion decided to play that game, humans would beat them at it. The initial move came from the Ghost Division, an elite human intelligence network operating outside traditional military authority. They tracked the missing convoys to a secret Dominion refueling station hidden in the nebula of Y-374. A squadron of human stealth spacecraft, equipped with superior cloaking technology, slid into the nebula undetected. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Human operatives broke into the station systems, triggering internal explosions before the adversary even knew they were under attack. Not a single Dominion ship escaped, but humanity didn't stop there. Sabotage. Squads penetrated Dominion shipyards, planting viral AI malware that destroyed entire production lines. Advanced human AI, no longer bound by Council restrictions, began continuous cyber attacks against Dominion military networks. Black Ops operatives sought down enemy agents, eliminating them with deadly precision. For every human ship lost, 5 Dominion assets burned. Zell Thorne's frustration escalated. He had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. The fight of attrition was no longer in his advantage. If he wanted to break humanity, he had only one choice: full-scale war. And it was just what Jason Reed had been waiting for. On Earth, the final element of humanity's defense was completed: the Revenant Protocol, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The instant the Dominion went to open war, they would confront not only humanity's military but an unstoppable army of AI-driven battleships, cybernetically augmented warriors, and weaponry so advanced that the Council had once barred them from even being explored. Humanity had been enslaved for too long. Now, they were released. And for the first time in history, the galaxy will realize what it actually meant to fear humanity. The Dominion struck with overwhelming power. Hundreds of warships appeared from hyperspace in a coordinated assault across human space. Zir dreadnoughts, gigantic city-sized boats bristling with armaments, led the charge. Swarms of Dominion fighters filled the void, their sleek black hulls reflecting the light of faraway stars. Plasma bolts lanced through the darkness, tearing through human orbital defenses like paper. It was the largest military operation in the history of the Galactic Federation, and it was doomed from the start. Jason Reed stood in the war room of the Terran Sovereignty headquarters, watching as the enemy fleet advanced. Around him, high-ranking military officials and AI strategists reviewed incoming data in real time. Admiral Vasquez smirked. "Right on schedule." Jason nodded. "They think they're attacking us." He glanced to the holographic monitor. "But we've been waiting for them." The minute the Dominion ships crossed into human soil, the Revenant Protocol was activated. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Dominion's admirals, witnessing their fleets carve a way through human colonies, believed triumph was within sight. But then reports started trickling in. Ships lost navigation, their targeting systems glitched. Entire battle groups went silent, their systems failing without reason. That's when the first human counterattack struck. In the shadow of a dying star, an unmanned Terran warship, commanded entirely by AI, emerged from behind an asteroid belt and opened fire. Its railguns, fueled by experimental magnetic acceleration, tore through Dominion hulls like they were made of paper. The opponent hardly had time to respond before another ship decloaked, then another, then hundreds. The humans had learned from their opponents. They had studied their techniques, their strategies. Now, they were using them against them. Dominion admirals worried as the tide turned. Human fleets, moving in unpredictable, AI-coordinated patterns, outmaneuvered their forces at every step. Dominion ships found themselves surrounded, their escape options sealed off. And then came the final blow: computerized warfare. The AI viruses that humanity had produced, no longer constrained by CIL regulations, released themselves upon Dominion. Networks. The enemy's own ships turned on them, shooting on their buddies. Dreadnoughts powered down mid-battle, their personnel locked out of control systems. The war had lasted only a day. By the time the Dominion fleet learnt what had transpired, it was already too late. Z. Thorin, gazing from the bridge of his flagship, felt something he had never felt before: terror. Here, humanity had changed the rules of combat. And now, for the first time in history, the cosmos would bow to them. Z. Thorin grasped the sides of his command console, his emerald gaze scanning the chaotic battlefield. The once proud Dominion fleet was in shambles. His dreadnought, the Veil of Conquest, stood as one of the last remaining warships still under his control. The rest had either been destroyed, incapacitated, or worse, turned against him. This is impossible," one of his bridge officers whispered, their scaled fingers quivering over the control panel. They were nothing, a lesser species. Z. Thorin's jaw stiffened. He had underestimated mankind. They all had. The Council had thought of them as reckless, as a species that needed to be managed. But the instant they had been freed from the Council's limitations, they had evolved faster, deadlier, and more unpredictable than any elder species had ever predicted. And now, the Dominion was paying the price. Thorin glanced abruptly toward the holographic display. More Terran vessels were coming from hyperspace. Larger, more advanced, each bristling with weaponry that shouldn't have been feasible for a species this young. Humanity hadn't simply been creating a fleet. They had been establishing an empire. And now, they were come to claim their win. A transmission request came through. The comms officer hesitated before gazing at Zell Thorin. "It's them." Z. Thorin inhaled, steeling himself before nodding. "Put them through." The hologram flared to life, presenting Jason Reed standing tall, arms crossed, his expression enigmatic. Beside him, Admiral Vasquez leaned against the command table, seeming almost bored. "Zell Thorin," Jason murmured, his voice calm yet tinged with steel. "I'd ask if you're ready to surrender, but honestly, that ship has sailed." Z. Thorin straightened, his pride conflicting with his survival instincts. "This war is not over." Jason smirked. "Oh, it is. You just haven't embraced it yet." He gestured to the conflict behind him. "Your fleet is done. Your empire is next." Z. Thorin's scales trembled in barely restrained wrath. "You think the Council will allow this?" Jason chuckled. "The Council? You mean the same Council that sat aside and let you attack us? The same one that's afraid of what we've become?" He leaned forward. "We were the United Galactic Federation's worst blunder. They kept us leashed, slowed us down, made sure we never got too powerful." His eyes clouded. "But then, they threw us out, and now we're done playing by their rules." Z. Thorin realized then, this wasn't just about the Dominion anymore. This was about humans taking their position in the galaxy. No longer outcasts, no longer constrained. They were drafting the new laws now, and the rest of the galaxy would have no choice but to follow. The conflict had ended. The Terran sovereignty has begun. The fall of the Zer Dominion was simply the beginning. News of humanity's tremendous victory spread around the galaxy like wildfire. The Dominion, once an empire that had ruled through terror and sheer force, was broken. Their ships lay in ashes, their warlords struggling to secure what little power they had left. Some sought to leave, others attempted last-ditch resistance. But it didn't matter. Humanity had already triumphed, and the galaxy was watching. Inside the United Galactic Federation's High Council chambers, terror gripped the elder races. The very species that had earlier decided to remove humanity now faced a dreadful prospect. "They crushed the Dominion in a day," one counselor muttered, their many eyes wide with shock. "They are rewriting warfare itself." Another hissed. "We have underestimated them for too long." At the head of the chamber, the Supreme Chancellor, of the council, a towering seal pod-like entity, raised a tendril. Enough, it rumbled. Humanity is overstepping. Their uncontrolled expansion and disrespect for order imperil us all. A quiet fell. Everyone in the chamber understood what those words meant. They were ready for battle. But this time, the council wouldn't only rely on one empire to fight its conflicts, they would combine all of them. Back on Earth, Jason Reed stood in the center of the Terran Sovereignty headquarters, watching as holographic reports flowed in across former Dominion space. Humanity wasn't only occupying planets, they were integrating them. Rebellious. Factions, long subjugated by the Dominion, welcomed human forces as liberators. Former Dominion vessels, now under Terran authority, were being transformed into the burgeoning Sovereignty fleet. Humanity wasn't only expanding, they were building. Something new. Admiral Vasquez moved up alongside him, arms folded. "Council's pissed," she replied, tossing a datapad onto the table. "They just declared us an unlawful rogue state." Jason smirked. "Let me guess. They're calling for collective action against the human threat?" Vasquez nodded. "They're assembling a coalition. The council is afraid, Jason. They know they can't control us anymore. So, they're about to unleash all they have at us." Jason breathed, staring at the chart of the cosmos. The council had every advantage. Numbers, resources, alliances built over millennia. On paper, humanity was still outmatched. But they weren't fighting on paper. He turned to the gathered military leaders. "They think we're reckless, unstable, that we're going to lash out first." General Carter scoffed. "They clearly don't know us." Jason nodded. "Exactly. We're not going to start this war. They are. And when they do..." He leaned forward, his voice soft yet firm. "We finish it." As the Galactic Federation organized its Grand Alliance, they didn't know the truth. They weren't fighting an upstart species anymore. They were fighting the builders of a new cosmic order. And humanity. Humanity had been waiting for this moment all along. The war began not with a declaration, but with an execution. A human envoy dispatched to seek a peaceful conclusion with the Galactic Council was imprisoned upon arrival. Within hours, a public broadcast flashed across the galaxy. An image of the ambassador kneeling before the Council's high tribunal, their hands bound, their face bloodied. Then the sentence was carried out. A plasma sword swung down. And humanity had its answer. The response was quick. On Luna, inside the war room of the Terran Sovereignty headquarters, Jason Reed watched the execution replay in silence. Around him, the highest-ranking officials of humanity stood, their expressions sombre. Admiral Vasquez exhaled slowly. "Well, I guess we're past negotiations." Jason's jaw constricted. He had expected conflict. He had even embraced the challenge. But this wasn't just a strategic decision. This was a message. The Council hadn't merely declared war, they had made it personal. He turned to General Carter. "How long until the fleet is ready?" Carter didn't hesitate. "We can deploy within 48 hours. Jason nodded. "Then let's make something clear." His voice was cold, final. The Council wanted to show the galaxy what happens to those who defy them. He motioned to the holographic display, where the execution still played on loop. "Now we show them what happens when you provoke humanity." The first strike arrived near the margins of Council space. Terran battleships, sleek and bristling with weaponry the Council had deemed too deadly aeons ago, came from slip space without warning. The enemy's fleets, built for control, not survival, were caught unprepared. Their defensive lines disintegrated in minutes. Their colonies, acclimated to Federation peacekeeping, succumbed before the first bullets were even fired. But mankind wasn't here to occupy. They were coming to burn the old order to the ground. Council shipyards were reduced to floating wrecks. Military outposts were converted into lifeless husks. Every strategic stronghold, every well-constructed defensive barrier destroyed. And the most scary part? The Council had no idea where mankind would strike next, because humanity wasn't following any pattern. The elder species understood. They weren't obeying rules. On the Council's homeworld, terror prevailed. The Supreme. Chancellor stood in the big war chamber, surrounded by frightened advisors. "They are unpredictable," one of the generals conceded. "They do not fight like the Dominion. They do not fight like anyone we have faced before." The Chancellor's tendrils twisted in frustration. "Then what do they want?" Silence. No one had an answer. Because for the first time in history, the council was battling an adversary that wasn't pursuing land, riches, or position. Humanity didn't want concessions. They sought justice, and they wouldn't stop until the council was nothing but dust. Back on Earth, Jason watched as the first phase of the conflict occurred exactly as planned. His fleet commanders delivered their newest findings, one by one. The council's defenses were failing, but Jason knew this was just the beginning. He turned to Vasquez. "Tell me when we have a clear path." Vasquez lifted an eyebrow. A clear path to where? Jason's expression was ice. To their home world, because this isn't simply war. This is retribution. The fight reached its last stage faster than anyone had imagined. The Council, once the unassailable authority of the galaxy, was now a broken relic of its former self. Entire fleets had been decimated, their supply lines cut, their worlds abandoned. The carefully manufactured image of their invincibility had been destroyed by a race they had once rejected as reckless and unimportant. And now, humanity stood at their doorstep. The heavens over the Council homeworld blazed. Terran warships descended like fallen gods, their armaments pouring disaster upon the remnants of the Council's fortifications. Plasma turrets blasted desperately from planetary fortifications, but they were no match for the AI-assisted precision of human war robots. Elite Council strike teams attempted one final push at the Capitol gates, only to be confronted by cybernetically augmented human soldiers, faster and deadlier than anything they had fought before. Inside the vast halls of the Council, supreme, Chancellor Val Zorth watched as the doors to the battle room were blasted wide. Jason Reed strode inside, his clothing battle-worn, his eyes steely and unforgiving. Behind him, Admiral Vasquez and a team of Terran operatives dispersed through the chamber, weapons ready. The Chancellor, beaten and desperate, raised a trembling tendril. "Please," he rasped. "There must be another way." Jason didn't blink. There was. He stepped forward. "You killed it." The execution of humanity's emissary had sealed their doom. The war may have been prevented. A balance may have been struck. But the Council had made a choice. And now, humanity was making theirs. Jason's voice was like a final verdict. "The United Galactic Federation is over?" Vasquez lifted her rifle. "So is your rule." A single shot resonated through the chamber. And with that, the old order toppled. The aftermath changed the galaxy. With the Council destroyed, humanity didn't take its place. They deleted it. No longer centralized power. No more bureaucratic oppression disguised as diplomacy. The ancient empires that had once relied on the Council's authority now had two choices: conform to the new system of independence or fade into irrelevance. Former Dominion colonies, long subjugated, were finally free. Merchant guilds and smaller groups, long at the mercy of Council laws, now prospered under a new free economy. The balance of power had altered irreversibly. And at the core of it all, humanity stood as the architects of this new century. They hadn't conquered. They had emancipated. But every species in the cosmos realized one obvious truth. Mankind had been held back for too long. Now they owned the future. Hey everyone! If you enjoyed these epic HFY stories, don't forget to subscribe, press the like button, and drop a comment below to let us know your favorite portion or what stories you'd love to hear next. Your support keeps the channel growing and the tales coming. Thanks for being part of the video.